right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're talking college football, and it's week number 4. It's time to get into those conference games. But I'm joined by my co-host, the man who is trying to get together the old Vero Beach Blue Streaks and get them into a conference as soon as possible. Yes, that team from the 1929-1930 season. My co-host, Fresh, how you doing?
Haps doing pretty good. My team's still they're still trying to make their way through it, but I think time's passed them by. Looking into week 4 though, I'm calling this is a prove it weekend right here. This is prove it Saturday. A lot of teams have a lot of things on line, kind of like a fork in the road, where a lot of the cupcake games are done, and we're ready to move into majority of the leagues are starting to play full on conferences the rest of the way. And I know we have a lot of games we want to talk about, but other games just like Minnesota, Michigan State, Texas Tech. Virginia, Syracuse, Oregon, Washington State, all these teams have so many questions and they can go in either direction right now. So it's going to be very intriguing this weekend on program trajectories going forward the rest of the year.
All right, Fresh. So let's go to our fan vote. For those of you, make sure you like and subscribe wherever you're getting these videos or podcasts you're from. And make sure you're following us on Twitter because each week we put out the fan vote so you guys get to select one game that we talk about. And the fan vote this week was Texas A&M versus the Arkansas Razorbacks. Fresh, why don't you take this away?
This is a big rivalry going way back to early 1900s. Really old Southwestern Conference tilt there. Took a break for a little bit and got it back in once A&M came into the SEC, and it's a bitter rivalry. As of 2009, they moved to Jerry World. Obviously, Jerry Jones was an Arkansas graduate. Lives in Dallas. A lot of fan base for both schools there. Makes it easy and very easy to put on TV and have everyone pack the stadium down there. So it's a nice little showcase game for both these schools. I know some people probably want them on campus, but I think having that adventure for the players and the fan bases is pretty neat. Looking at this ball game, the Hogs finally broke a losing streak last year and won 20-10 in 2021. It was mostly dominated the past few years by A&M, and Arkansas's program's been down. So seeing them resurge and make this a battle was a nice little thing done last year by KJ Jefferson and Sam Pittman and the Hogs. There's one funny little stat though that when I was starting to research on this game, a team in this game has less red zone possessions than Iowa, and that is Texas A&M. Iowa has 4 red zone possessions on the season, 3 games. A&M has 3. That just shows you the lack of offensive pop right now in College Station or Jimbo Fisher, where Iowa has surpassed you in an offensive category. That is never a good thing. Last week, though, Arkansas kind of had a mess around situation. Obviously, Bob Petrino came back with Missouri State, went down into Fayetteville, and it had to take a punt return for Arkansas to get them back, going and put them back in the lead. You kind of wondered, was that a sign of things to come for the Razorbacks? Maybe they just sort of tired from the first 2 games when they played Cincinnati and South Carolina, or are they really looking ahead to A&M in this football game? We're going to find out pretty quickly what the answer to that question was once kickoff happens there on Saturday. But it's something that sort of popped to me as well during research of you played 2 ranked teams coming to that ball game. Well, no, 1 ranked team in South Carolina, conference opener. You kind of had a letdown. You have a lower program coming in there. Guys are playing up for their old coach who's returning. So you kind of figure what dynamics were happening in that ball game and what kind of Arkansas team are we going to get this week. A&M coming off of a very spirited win. It was a slugfest versus Miami. Obviously 2 weeks before that, lost to App State. They've been dealing with a lot of turmoil and trying to figure out how they're going to click. How are they going to be able to function in this football game? Are they going to play a little more freer? Or are they still going to play tight like they've played the past few weeks? The defense really is not the problem for A&M. It's definitely the offense. And so we're going to find out a lot about them coming into this ball game. As I talked about the issues with offense for A&M, Arkansas has the worst pass defense in the nation, giving up 352 yards a game. That is the worst. A&M's pass offense is terrible. So something has to give. Either Arkansas's pass defense is going to vastly improve statistically this week, or A&M is going to find holes in that secondary, and Max Johnson and Ania Smith and the rest of that Aggie offense is going to start clicking and moving under Jimbo and what everyone sort of envisioned those playmakers to do. So it's going to be pretty interesting to see. Max Johnson obviously was not really the spark that the offense needed. He was 13 for 24 for 163 and 1 touchdown. He was sacked 3 times. So he really didn't bring excitement or energy. Special teams was a big, proponent of that success for the A&M last week. They had the muff punt deep in Miami territory that led to a touchdown that kind of helped build a buffer, and then allowed them in the end to survive. But I think coming in this ball game, special teams is going to be key for whoever's going to win this football game. Because you look at the touchdown that A&M got versus App State. App State scored. They took a kickoff to the house repeatedly right after that. That was only really the offense they had in that ball game. And then Arkansas last week, obviously versus Missouri State, I already mentioned it. They returned a punt to jumpstart them and get them back in the lead. And then A&M beat Miami really off that muff punt. So special teams, whether it's a kick return or somebody making a mistake, that is going to be the real deciding factor because defense for the Aggies is their strength. Arkansas's offense is their strength. The other two sides of the ball, you don't know what you're going to find. So special teams are going to be the deciding factor. It's interesting when you're looking at the stats. Nothing much really there. KJ Jefferson really hasn't had the big game yet. His receivers, Matt Landers and Hazelwood, really haven't gone off yet. Where are they going to find that explosive play on offense? Running back position, Raheem Sanders, run for 440 yards and 4 touchdowns, averaging 6.7. I continue to see him having, being the focal point of the offense and trying to run the football, but against that Aggie defense, where's he going to find the holes? I think the passing game for Arkansas is going to have to show its head early and often for them to get some separation and make some plays. On the other side of the ball, though, A&M, they've got to find ways to get the ball in Nia Smith's hands. He's a playmaker, whether it's in slot, move him in the backfield, put him in motion at receiver, at kick return, or whatever. And then obviously Devin Aiken at running back. He's got to be a focal point. Both these teams have tremendous pressure. It's a conference, opener for A&M. It's a second game in the conference for Arkansas. I think when it's all said and done, I just have more faith right now in Arkansas to find a way to get a win. I say Arkansas wins 23-17 over A&M, and Jimbo's hot seat in College Station is exploding.
It's weird. Vegas has Texas A&M as a 2-point favorite in this game here, especially with the game being in Dallas, which is very interesting to me because statistically, Arkansas is the better team on paper. Statistically, Arkansas should absolutely manhandle A&M. I don't love this idea. For some reason, I'm a little bit nervous about Arkansas. This is going to be the game where I will fully embrace the Razorbacks to go, yes, you are a threat in the West, possibly a team that when they match up with Alabama, that this is going to be must-see football. We thought that going into the season that the date in October with Texas A&M versus Alabama, that was going to be must-see football. And kind of right now, if you had to ask, I feel like Alabama would boat race them in that game. Again, there's still a little bit of football to play. We're not at that game yet, so A&M, you got a chance to show me something. Again, it comes down to quarterback play. I like Arkansas's quarterback better than I like A&M's quarterback play. So I'm gonna go Arkansas and technically an upset here, but I would take Arkansas on some points even with this if possible. I see this as a touchdown game as well. I'm gonna go 24-17. I'm going to go pretty basic on that one. I think A&M is going to put up a little bit of points. I just don't think that they're going to have the offense to score with Arkansas.
Yeah, like we said, sticking with the theme of a prove it Saturday. Arkansas, are you really a contender? And A&M, do you have anything to show of yourself in that program?
All right, so let's go to another game where there's a lot of questions and a lot of chance for teams to prove themselves. The Florida Gators traveling up to Rocky Top to face the Volunteers. This is a 3:30 kickoff game right now. Tennessee is a 10.5-point favorite. Over/under at this time is set at 62.5 points. This is the second test for the Volunteers. They have a 3-game stretch coming up here with a bye in there. This is UF. Then they have a bye. Then they travel to Baton Rouge to face LSU. Never an easy place to play down there. And then they have Alabama in Knoxville as well. Hendon Hooker has been as good as advertised, completing 70% of his passes, 844 yards, 6 touchdowns, and doesn't have a single interception. He takes care of the football. That's exactly what we expected to see from Hooker in Josh Heupel's offense. Tennessee right now is scoring 52 points a game and averaging 553 yards of total offense. Tennessee, while yes, they have played Ball State. Yes, they have played a MAC school. But they did also play Pitt. So they have been a little bit tested. Pitt is a ranked top 25 ranked team. But the thing that came into this game is Florida has a half decent pass defense. They held Utah to 216 yards. They held Kentucky to 202 yards. Both of those teams have experienced quarterbacks who know how to get rid of the football quick, who know how to read a defense and find the open receivers. I think Tennessee has a little more talent, but we're going to need to see Hooker start connecting with Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman very early on this game. You don't want Florida to be able to put 8 men in the box to stop their rushing attack, because Tennessee has had a very nice rushing attack with Jalen Wright. And then they're also spelling him with Jabari Small. So when Tennessee commits to the run, it's going to open up that pass. Jalen Wright right now is averaging 5 yards per carry. He's got 3 touchdowns. That's what Tennessee's going to want to do on offense. They are going to want to control this football. Do not put the football in the hands of the Florida Gators. Napier has done everything they said he was going to do with Florida. Now, everyone looked at that week 1 win versus Utah. Everyone elevated the Gators maybe way too far in advance. Billy Napier is the right coach for Florida. I feel he's a much better coach than Dan Mullen, but you cannot rush these things. It takes time to build a program, and definitely rebuild a program like the University of Florida. Take a look at Tennessee. That is a great example. Josh Heupel is the right coach for Tennessee. All things considered, he's the right coach. Look at the play on the field. You look back at what Tennessee started out with, though, and they didn't rush Heupel. They didn't get to this point immediately. They had to have a year where they built and built and built. That's what Florida's got to do. Napier's got the Gators running the ball extremely well. Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne have over 400 yards between the two of them. Together, Florida Gators have 636 yards on the ground. But here's the thing. Tennessee has shown the ability to stop the run. So what Tennessee is going to need to do on defense is they're going to have to put the ball into Anthony Richardson's hand. He's only completing 53% of his passes. In order for Florida to win this game, he has to be better. Jack Miller, suffering an injury, is not fully healthy right now. Don't know if he's, because colleges don't have to give us injury reports, don't know if he's going to be able to play, if he's out for this game. There might be a time where Florida starts going to a 2-quarterback system. I look at this, and this was the question I wrote down in my research. Can Florida win this game without a passing attack? And if Florida's able to win the turnover battle, if they're able to force Tennessee into long down and distance, they got a shot at this thing because they can play ball control. They can run the football. They're going to be able to run the ball somewhat against Tennessee. I don't know if they're going to be as good as they have been, but Kentucky and Utah both have decent defenses. USF was a joke, but the other two teams have half decent defenses that they can kind of slow Florida down. They didn't really do that. Florida's allowing 195 yards on the ground themselves. So this is going to be a game to see if Florida can take that next step in their page of development under Napier, or is it time for us really to start having real conversations with Tennessee? If Tennessee beats Florida this week, they get a week off to prepare to that LSU game. They win that LSU game, and now they're sitting at 5-0 versus Alabama. That's going to be a marquee game. Alabama has shown that they do have flaws. They're still one of the top 2 or 3 teams in all of America right now, but they do have flaws and they can be beaten. Tennessee does have an offense that may give Alabama some fits. If Florida wins, it shows Napier's making those adjustments. If Tennessee wins, we're starting to see where Josh Heupel is on this development track. Right now, for me, I've told you from at the end of last year, I was high on the Volunteers. I think that this game is going to be the game that Hendon Hooker becomes a household name. If you are north of the Mason-Dixon line, if you are a Big Ten fan, if you are an ACC fan, if you're a Pac-12 fan, Big 12 fan, and you have not watched Hendon Hooker, this is the game that you need to turn on. Hendon Hooker is one of the best quarterbacks in college football out there. Love what this kid's doing. I said he was one of my sleeper Heisman picks. I won't be shocked if he gets, by the end of the season, if he gets an invite to New York or if he is one of the finalists for the Heisman. He's a great football player. This is going to be an entertaining game to watch. Cedric Tillman, first round wide receiver grade. someone to keep your eye on there as well. But again, I think that Florida just doesn't have it. They have those two great safeties on the back end of their defense, but I just don't think they're at the point that Tennessee is in the rebuild of their program. I think Tennessee is a year ahead of where Napier should be. So watch out right there. But hey, Florida has the firepower to win this game. So don't be shocked to see that happen. In the end, I'm going Tennessee by 13 in this game. I think Florida's going to keep with them a little bit, but give me 37-24 Volunteers with the win right at the under.
Volunteers will boat race Florida. It won't even be close. The only way Florida does it is they run the ball and never let Richardson throw a pass. It will be ugly. It will be disgusting. If Tennessee does not win this football game, Josh Heupel needs to go to the athletic director and the chancellor and return his new contract extension, $1 million he took last week. This will be ugly, and Florida will be put back into their place, and they'll lose what they should have lost last week, and Tennessee will assert their presence that they're actually legit.
All right, Fresh. Where are we going next?
We are going to the plains of Iowa for Baylor, Iowa State. Big game. Really want to see, has Baylor truly recovered from that loss in Provo? It was a couple multi-overtime game. They had a cakewalk last week, but really this is the next big one on the road in Ames. Can they recover? Are they ready to go? Is Blake Shapen and that offense ready to function? I know Dave Aranda will have the defense ready to go, but is that Baylor offense truly ready to operate? Because they kind of looked dysfunctional in the second half versus BYU, and they had initial clunkiness last week as well. So that Baylor offense, if they're going to be successful in the Big 12, Texas can score, Oklahoma can score, Oklahoma State can score, Iowa State at least has Xavier Hutchinson in the passing game. But there's teams out there. They're going to have to. They can't just give up 10 points and expect to win. That Baylor offense has got to be there. That's kind of what I really want to see this week. From the Iowa State standpoint, you beat Iowa. Was that that cannot be the best part of your season? You finally got that monkey off of your back. Now you need to build off of that momentum and go into conference play and sort of set the tone. The Brock Purdy, Breece Hall, David Montgomery years, still never won a conference title. This is a chance, if you have a program, to sort of build one on top of the other, take advantage of a big win over Baylor at home, and keep moving yourself forward. This is going to be it's a sneaky 11 a.m. kickoff in Iowa, noon on the Eastern, so it's a really cool opening game. It should have a lot of intrigue. I don't expect a ton of points. I expect a very methodical, run-heavy, both sides, with defenses even scoring or a late touchdown pass in this ball game. When you kind of look at some of the stats, the Cyclones have won 3 of the last 5, so they've kind of owned it a little bit. And in all those games, they've won by more than a touchdown. The 2 Baylor wins have both been by 2 points. So Baylor wins the close wins. Iowa State and their wins have controlled the football game. If it's back and forth or Baylor comes out on top, Baylor survives. If Iowa State's in control, they usually win it going away. So that's how you're going to kind of know right off the bat where the tone is set, where this game will be heading based on historical movement. Blake Shapen has only thrown 4 touchdowns in 3 weeks and 535 yards. That passing attack for Baylor has got to be better. When you look at, they're trying to replace Breece Hall. They have Richard Reese is there, so you go from Breece to Reese. He has 237 and 5 touchdowns, averaging 7 yards a carry. He's got to be much more involved. You see the success that they've had there at Baylor. Not the Breece to Reese. Reese is playing for Baylor, but you see the success they've had on the ground. They've got to continue to fuel that if they want to keep the Iowa State offense on the sideline and also give their defense a break. When you look at the other side, the Cyclones are going to focus on airing it out. We've talked about Xavier Hutchinson a few times. Right now, it's 26 receptions, 300-plus yards, 5 touchdowns, averaging 11.4 a catch. He is from Jacksonville, so yes, we are biased toward his success. We want to see him have a great time. He has 34% of all the receptions on the team. It is him and him alone. Very, very similar to Mims at Oklahoma, where he is the main focal point of the offense in the passing game. They've got to get him the football. Obviously Dave Aranda's got to know where he is at all times. They do a great job of putting him in X, Y, and Z slot. They even put him in the backfield a few times to keep him from getting that direct contact and jam from the defense. Defense is going to have to focus on him and take him away and put the pressure on the rest of that Cyclone offense to manufacture points. They've already played a very good defense in Iowa. They kind of know how to play for that atonement. They're going to see a very similar defense in Baylor this week. Can they find ways to scratch out points, force a Baylor offense into turnovers, and generate that crowd noise into points for themselves. Stat wise, very similar across the points. Baylor's averaging 43 points a game, a lot inflated from last week in the opener versus two lesser opponents. And Iowa State's averaging 32. Baylor's giving up 14. Iowa State's giving up 9. So both defense very stout, very aggressive. But we're going to see which one of these teams is going to break, which is going to have the pressure that's going to take them out, and which one's going to be able to overcome and get that first conference win. When the dust settles, I just have a feeling Iowa State, with that win over Iowa, they have a little more energy, a little more cockiness, a little more freer. And I just see too many inefficiencies on the Baylor offense to be able to be consistent. And after last week's the way they started, coming up that multiple overtime loss to BYU, I just don't know if they have the full component. I think Iowa State's a little more battle tested for a home environment in this kind of early season matchup. I think Iowa State gets it 17-14 in a very, very tight, battle tested defensive effort.
So, Fresh, I owe Iowa more than anyone can owe. So I'm going with the Cyclones in this game. Definitely think that Iowa State is the better team right now. I know that everyone's going to look at the rankings here for where Baylor is compared to where Iowa State is. And this is going to be a close game, I think. I think that these two teams match up beautifully with each other. I think that there's a lot of complementary football that's going to be played. You hit it right on the head. We're both big fans of Xavier Hutchinson. We think that he is the Jacksonville product, is a great wide receiver out there in Iowa State. At the end of the day, this game seems like Matt Campbell's still playing with some house money. Remember, we saw it last year and maybe a little bit the year before. The pressure really gets to Iowa State when there's expectations. The expectations aren't there yet. They win this game, expectations are there. We can start talking about them again. We can start talking about Matt Campbell again. The expectations aren't there. Baylor coming off that loss to BYU, do they really, really recover from that? Have they fully recovered? They're going into a very difficult environment. I think I like Iowa State in this game a lot more as I'm talking about them. I'm kind of convincing myself that way. But I think Matt Campbell and the Cyclones are really going to have something for Baylor. I think that this game's going to get out of hand maybe in the fourth quarter. I think I'm going to go 28-13 in this game. But I think Iowa, at the end of the day, they have the 8th best defense in total yards. They have the 11th best scoring defense. The Cyclones have a really, really good defense out there. So I'm going with Iowa State in this game.
You can't always, one thing you always see is these 11 a.m. noon kicks. It's weird when teams wake up and how they're ready to play early in the morning.
All right, Fresh. So our next game, man, how crazy does 2 weeks make here? Because this is usually one of the bigger games in the Big Ten, and that's the Wisconsin Badgers traveling to Columbus to face the Ohio State University. Wisconsin's 2-1 and coming into this game, and that loss to Washington State really hurt the Badgers. I think it hurt them in the perspective nationally going into this game because almost nobody is giving them a chance. Under what idea does Vegas have Ohio State as an 18.5-point favorite in this game? I understand Wisconsin's quarterback is still Graham Mertz. And if you haven't listened to this podcast before, I still think Graham Mertz is one of the worst quarterbacks in college football. He is playing better this year, but Ohio State should have something for him. The Buckeyes picking right where they left off offensively this year. CJ Stroud, 940 yards passing already, 11 touchdowns, no interceptions. My biggest concern is Trayvon Henderson going to be healthy for this game. Mayan Williams has looked really, really good as a complimentary back. He's a little bit different of a running back than Trayvon Henderson. I also really like what I saw Dallin Hayden last week in some mop-up duty as well. You can see that there's some talent there. I know Toledo didn't really have that great of a defense. We were more impressed with their offense out of a MAC school, but they aren't really a great defensive team as well there. And then let's talk about the lineage. Marvin Harrison Jr., 18 catches, 342 yards, 5 touchdowns in not even 3 full games. This kid is making his old man proud. I mean, I don't know about you, Fresh. I grew up, and my first real taste of fantasy football was drafting Marvin Harrison on my football team, and the just dude going off week in, week out with Peyton Manning. I think his dad is really proud of him. I hope he is. And then look at Emeka Ibuka, the speedster, 3 touchdowns out of him. It's so weird for me to look at the statistics as I'm researching this game and to look down and see Jackson Smith-Njigba with 4 catches, no touchdowns for 36 yards. I don't know, man. It's just weird. This Ohio State defense or offense is ready to go. I think that they're going to have something for Wisconsin. On the other side of things, I told you, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of Graham Mertz, but going into this game, there is one player that truly scares me. More than anything else that Wisconsin does is they produce really, really good running backs. And they have a phenomenal one out there in Camp Randall. Braylon Allen, one of the toughest, meanest runners I've seen in a long, long time. I love this kid, Fresh. I really wish that he was also part of Ohio State because I would feel much better not having Trayvon Henderson out there. But this is going to be a true test for the Ohio State run defense. You look at what Jim Knowles has done in these first 3 games, it looks like we're returning back to the silver bullet defense. Guys flying around, they're getting to the ball more, they're tackling, something that you didn't see last year under Kerry Combs. Braylon Allen is going to be a true test. 50 carries, 332 yards. He's averaging 6.6 yards a carry. He's got 5 touchdowns already. The other thing that scares me a little bit is the Wisconsin defense. Running backs and defense. That's what Wisconsin does really, really well. Wisconsin has 7 interceptions already on the year. I don't care who you play. Anytime you've taken the ball away 7 times and then they've gotten 7 sacks as well, that's an impressive thing to do. If Wisconsin wants to have a chance in this game, they're going to force CJ Stroud into turnovers, and then they're going to hand the ball to Braylon Allen 35 times in this game. And he is going to wear down the Ohio State defense. In the end, I don't think that's happening. I think offensively, this Ohio State team is starting to find their rhythm. I think we look back at that Notre Dame game. I don't think we realized how much losing JSN in that game really kind of was a ripple in the Ohio State offense. I think that what they did is they go into practice. What do we do when we lose this player? Who's the next man up and ready to go in that situation? You look at, like we said, Marvin Harrison Jr., he's the guy who stepped up. Mayan Williams, he's the guy that stepped up. Ryan Day has this team focused. He has them ready to go. I have Ohio State. I think this game is going to be close at halftime. I think Wisconsin's going to limit the time of possession for Ohio State, but I think it's going to come down to the second half. I think Ohio State will eventually wear down the Wisconsin defense. I don't know if the defensive backs are going to be able to cover with the Ohio State receivers for that long of a game. I think this is eventually going to turn into a track meet. Give me Ohio State 48, Wisconsin 21.
Notre Dame gave Wisconsin's defense the blueprint on how to slow the game down. Expect if Wisconsin's bringing anything more than 4 on any play, they're getting desperate. I expect them dropping 8 people, a lot of zone, cover 3, really forcing anything underneath and not letting Stroud take the top off of that defense. They're going to do whatever they can to maybe disguise some zone underneath with cover 3 over top, bringing him, trying to confuse him and frustrate him because he's going to want to hit the deep ball. You saw the frustration in that Notre Dame game. He kept trying to want to put it up top and not take what's underneath, and eventually was forced to. Jim Leonard's not dumb. He's going to try to take the same approach. But unlike Notre Dame, that offense is going to actually have to score. Braylon Allen is the only offense on the team. There's no Chris Chambers, Lee Evans, Alex Erickson at wide receiver on this squad. At least they haven't shown themselves yet to create a balance and a viable pass. The Badgers' only way home in this football game is running the football and forcing turnovers and playing very defense that irritates C.J. Stroud and Henderson and forces them into mistakes. They don't have the firepower to get in a track meet. The only way they get 20 points is if it is, like you said, 48-21, and the game is over and they give up late touchdowns. I just don't see the offense for Wisconsin be able to compete at this level, especially since the defense will probably get worn down by playing on the field so much of that offense just moving the ball. They're going to have to play out of their minds in this football game. If this was in Camp Randall, that's a different story. Badgers at home versus Ohio State. There's a lot of those tough games where the Buckeyes in situations and have lost a couple. But when they end up playing in Columbus, it's very rarely close. The last time I think it was close was when Ron Dane was there. So if the Badgers are playing this game close, Ohio State has issues that they're going to have to deal with and really do some soul searching. But I think this is a big chance for Ohio State to make a statement on a national stage.
Yeah, the last time I can remember really close at Columbus was the Hail Mary by Braxton Miller back in, I want to say it was 11 or 12, someone back then. But again, Fresh, you're spot on this one. I think that at the end of the day, it's going to come down to more offensive firepower. And if then they're only rushing 4, they're going to turn around, start handing the ball to Mayan Williams and force them to give up 5-6 yards to carry, and they'll just run the ball down the field. So I love this game, man. This is one of, I always consider Wisconsin Ohio State's second rival. I know there's some argument there, whether it's Penn State, whether it's Michigan State after Michigan, but I always felt like Ohio State, Wisconsin, because the teams are so evenly matched year in and year out, this is just always a fun game between the Buckeyes and the Badgers. So, all right, Fresh.
Blackout in Columbus, so it'll
Yeah, and I
don't.
love those jerseys. I love those jerseys. I got a black Ezekiel Elliott jersey. I'll probably be rocking in that game. All right, Fresh. Let's go. We pulled an audible here. We decided that we were going to have not one, but 2 games of the week here. We're going to start with our first game of the week. 2 undefeated teams that have played absolutely nobody. Maryland traveling to Ann Arbor to play that school up north, the Michigan Wolverines, in the big house. Fresh, I got a lot of notes on this game here. So go ahead, hit me with something what you got.
Well, last year I had Maryland as a team on the rise in the preseason. And they actually got off to a decent start, offensive scoring. Um, and then they met the Iowa Hawkeyes at home on a Friday. And the Iowa Hawkeyes forced, I think it was 7 turnovers, like 2 or 3 pick sixes. And it went from a 7-7 ball game in middle first quarter to 49-7 at halftime. And we went from, it was a big game for Maryland. Could they have proven that they were a contender and legit, to they spiraled to 5-7, I think, and missed a bowl game by losing to, or no, they went to 6-6 and beat Rutgers the last week of the season to be a bowl eligible. This is the same kind of fork in the road for that Maryland program. They've had a couple of guys transfer out, but Talia Tagovailoa is still the quarterback. It's Tua's brother. If they sound similar, that's exactly who they are. Mike Locksley was an offensive assistant at Alabama for a long time and was the head coach at New Mexico State for a while, so he has experience. But really trying to turn Maryland into a legit program, and this is that setting. You're going on the road to Michigan, and it's already tough enough for the Rutgers, Indianas, and Marylands of the world playing in the Big Ten East. You're basically the Auburns, Mississippi States, Ole Misses of the SEC West, where you are the underachieving team in that side of the league, where unfortunately you're stuck with against a bunch of powerhouses. This is one chance where if you want to prove that you're legit, you have an opportunity in front of you. As a fan, you don't have to win the game if you're Maryland for me, but you at least got to show competitive for all 4 quarters. You had the chance last year and you got blown out and you weren't competitive versus Iowa. That's got to change, because if you have the same situation happen here, yes, Michigan's very good. They went to their defending Big Ten champs. They went to the playoff, but them playing Colorado State, and the other 2 teams they played, that doesn't tell me anything. Just like Maryland's offense doesn't tell me anything of their stats. This is a chance. You got to wipe them all out, and you've got to play this football game. And you've got to focus. You've got to score. When you're looking at stats wise, Maryland's averaging 499 yards total offense, and Michigan's averaging 497. They are both putting points up and putting yards up at a rapid pace. Maryland's scoring 40. Michigan scored 55. Maryland's given up 19 points. Michigan's given up 5. These stats are so outrageous that it really tells you absolutely nothing. So you have to just play this football game. And that's what, if I'm Mike Locksley, I'm telling my staff, look, don't look at the stuff. Look at the film. Look at the opportunities where we can attack the Michigan offense and defense. Don't look at their stats, because those stats, just like ours, are pointless and meaningless coming into this football game. On the other side, if I'm Jim Harbaugh, McNamara's obviously out, not playing. J.J. McCarthy, who you've kind of been wanting to be the starting quarterback anyway for a while, and there's been a lot of call for him. This is his chance. This is his. He's get the full game. He's not looking over his shoulder. Blake Corum's is running back. Ronnie Bell, receiver. You've got to get these guys going at a full tilt, playing a full game. The defense will. They're going to run guys through. They're still trying to get gelled themselves. I think they haven't really seen much competition to see what they truly have either. This is going to be a prove it game for both these schools. Where you're at, what barometer are you at? Michigan, if you win, ugly or going away, it shows you know what you're at and you're able to move forward. If you lose this football game, depending if it's a miracle play, we've seen it happen when App State in the blocking the extra point, or if it's a complete domination. Harbaugh, you will know how much you've lost from last year's team and how big of an impact that's made. This will be that turning point. If Maryland is competitive, not even if they win, but if they are competitive, it shows that program has turned a corner and they're able to compete with a very high level football team. So I'm actually very intrigued to watch this matchup, because it's going to tell us a lot about where these two teams are at, where these two programs are at. Is Maryland just another school, or are they actually really want to threat for that third or fourth team in the Big Ten East, and maybe even not just a 6-6 bowl invite, but maybe an 8-4 record at the end of the year. This is a big chance for them. Let's see what happens. I'm pretty intrigued. I still think Michigan finds a way to get it done. I think Michigan has, in the end, a better offensive line. I think that's going to be the biggest factor. They're going to run the ball a lot of Maryland, even if it gets out of control, or if they start losing focus in the passing game, they can always run the ball, and they will win this one 34-17.
So fresh, both these teams 3-0. Michigan's opponents are 2-9 on the year. Maryland 3-0. Maryland's opponent 3-7 on the year. I looked at this game and I have all these stats that I wrote down. I look at Blake Corum. He's averaging 7 yards a carry, 7 touchdowns already. Again, who have you played? I looked at this. J.J. McCarthy completing 88% of his passes, but they've only scored 3 touchdowns. That's a concern for me right there. The fact that you haven't thrown the ball into the end zone, I get it. You're relying on the rushing attack there. But when you're completing all of those passes and you've only thrown 3 touchdowns against much lesser competition, that's a concern for me. I was looking at a couple of these kids just to see, like, matchup-wise or anything else that maybe stuck out at me. The first thing I wanted to see is Ronnie Bell, wide receiver for Michigan. Went out in the first game of the year last year with a gruesome injury. He's come back. He's got 14 catches on the year, 181 yards and a touchdown right now. You're seeing that he's bouncing back very nicely from that injury, being a weapon for the Wolverines there. Maryland has a trio of receivers. They also have a receiver, Dante Demas Jr. Tore his ACL in October last year, was out for the rest of the year. Depending on which draft site you look at, a lot of draft sites have him as a first-round talent wide receiver. He is a matchup nightmare for the Michigan defensive backs. 6'4". If Tagovailoa can find him in the red zone, it can make for a very difficult day for the Wolverines. They also have Jarrett Jones and Copeland. Those 3 receivers are accounting for over 50% of the passing yards Maryland has had this year already. The real question I'm going to ask, though, because I'm a guy who likes questions going into this game, which team's defense is legit? Both of these teams have completely stifled their competition. Which one can handle it when the offense on the other side is pretty good? Both these teams have a reasonably good offense. So which one's going to stop them? Playing in the big house, not very easy to do. It's a tough environment for Maryland to go into. Granted, this game is a noon kickoff, which should help the Wolverines a little bit, but still. So the biggest stadium in all of college football. It's a tough place to play. This game is going to be amped up because Michigan fans are going to be ready for it because this is the first competitive game of the season. Maryland, in order to win this game, you have to throw the ball and you have to put Michigan on its heels. You have to play from ahead. You have to take the ball out of Blake Corum's hands. You have to force J.J. McCarthy to throw the football all over the field. He has not proved that he can do that yet. Not saying he can't do it, but I need to see it against a better defense than the three teams that they played already. You got to avoid the penalties. You got to win the turnover battle. And you got to keep this game close going into the fourth quarter. If you can do this, Mike Locksley could walk away with his first major signature win as a head coach over there at Maryland. He could elevate himself, and maybe, just maybe after what we saw from Michigan State last weekend, he might be able to take Michigan State's spot. Now, I still don't know if he's going to have an overall better team. Definitely not better than the Buckeyes. Definitely not better long-term over the Wolverines. Definitely not better than Penn State. But he could slip this year into that fourth spot. He's got a really nice recruiting class last year. Got another nice one going on right now. Definitely a possibility. Michigan, you cannot let Maryland hang around. You have to put the boots to Maryland early. You have to put the boots to them early. You have to put the boots to them often. You have to take their will away from them. If you let them hang around, if you let them believe that they can win, they will burn you in the end. Me personally, I'm going to go, this game is going to be very, very close. I don't think it's going to be a double-digit win. But I did have to go back and look at some historical data. Since Maryland beat Michigan in 2014, in the last 6 meetings, Fresh, Michigan has outscored Maryland 261 to 59. That is a 200-point plus point differential. That's insane. Michigan has more talent. I like where Maryland's going. I'm going to say Wolverines are going to wind up winning this game 35-27. Maryland keeps it close enough to go against the 16.5-point spread for Michigan. But at the end of the day, Michigan's too much for the Terrapins.
It's interesting you mentioned Demas Jr. The Iowa, their second turnover they forced, he got injured on that same play, and that's when the game went from a tie ball game to spiraling out of control. So he was definitely a focal point and a key player that offense they really missed off last year.
Yeah, and he's been easing his way back into contention right now. So, all right, Fresh. Our last game of the week, the Clemson Tigers traveling to North Carolina. Come on and raise up, Demon Deacons. Both these teams 3-0. Clemson does have a conference win already. Wake Forest does not. Fresh, this game right now, Clemson is a 7-point road favorite. Over-under set at 55.5. Let's dive into it because both of these teams, this is interesting here. This is really interesting to me.
Well, it comes down to the quarterback. I think this one first off, Sam Hartman. He's looked better, but still, coming off of the medical procedure and the issue in the offseason, is he fully ready, healthy, and ready to go? And then on the Clemson side, DJU has shown some progress. Still looking over his shoulder. He knows there's a big 5-star quarterback waiting on the bench that wants to take his job. I mean, at this point, DJU 52, 5 touchdowns and a pick through 3 games. Is that elite? Yeah, we'll see. I think this is going to be the best matchup. I don't really consider Georgia Tech as a fantastic defense. And Furman, what else they've played, really has not posed much of any competition. So this will be that first real test for the Clemson offense. Their defense is loaded with all Irrational Conference preseason players, all American preseason players, top to bottom. They're playing with emotion. Obviously, if you haven't heard, Brian Breezy, his sister, unfortunately, lost her fight to brain cancer and passed away. And it's been a very somber, intense moment for the Tiger family. So it's been also a rallying point for that team. And I think that with him back this week, it's going to be an extra jolt of focus for the Tiger defense and that Tiger team as well, playing in her honor. So that's an unknown thing that you have coming into this football game with so much on the line, being a big conference game for two teams who have seen a lot of success the past few years. Will Shipley will be, I think, the main focus for Clemson and how they have to run this ball. They've got to maintain control, keep Sam Hartman and AT Perry in that offense off the field. Have Shipley run the football, be more of a factor in that ground game for Clemson, dictate the pace, give the defense a rest, and allow him to become what everyone's expecting him to be, is that stud running back. We really haven't, everyone compared him to Christian McCaffrey. We still haven't actually seen him fully take over a football game. Will this finally be that one game where he becomes that guy who can go out there and put up 160, 180 in total offense, 3 touchdowns, and really be that focal point and take the pressure off of DJU in that offense and be the guy who's going to take over the reins? That's the biggest one I want to see here, because that Wake Forest offense can score, and they showed it last year. They've showed it so far this year. They can put points on the board. Obviously, last week they had a 1 point win. They didn't play as great. There are some kinks in the armor there. They have to get themselves fully up and running and fully going. Um, it's going to be, if Wake Forest is going to have any chance, A.T. Perry at wide receiver has 12 receptions, 222 yards, and a touchdown. Has got to be much more involved. He was a big factor last year in their passing game and their success, and going to the ACC title game. He's got to be even more of a focus today, on Saturday and going forward in the year, if they want to maintain what they had last year, and go back to Charlotte and play for the title. He has got to be that guy for Sam Hartman. Hartman trusts him. He's got to be there. If he's taken out of the offense, then they kind of are in a hodgepodge of don't know what they really have. So that's going to be a big factor in this football game. Both teams are averaging over 40 points, but like we said, who have they really played from a defensive standpoint? Obviously, Wake did play Vandy, so you have a little slight competition. They're better this year, but not fantastic. Um, Wake was giving up 24 points a game. Clemson somehow is still giving up 14. I think they're better than that, but they've given up 14 points a game. But that's the defense for Clemson. This is that one chance you've got to lock it in and take it to that next level, and use that emotion. I think Clemson finds a way to get it done in the end. I'm saying they win 24-20. It will be sluggish, but that defense for Clemson will lock it down and just hold off just enough to allow them to get the victory on Saturday and improve to 2-0. And
So this is a super intriguing matchup to me here, Fresh, and I looked at this in a variety of different ways. Clemson has one of the best rush defenses out there, only allowing 71 yards a game. So then I started looking at the Demon Deacons. They don't run the football. Like, I know that they've attempted 107 times for 3.6 yards a carry. And I know they've done it a little bit more than they've thrown it, but their offense is going to move passing the football. They're not going to spend a lot of time running the football. I would expect Sam Hartman to have probably like 50 passing attempts in this game. And the name I circled was A.T. Perry as well. 6'5". He's a matchup nightmare. Him versus Jacksonville's Fred Davis out of Trinity Christian. That's going to be the interesting matchup there. Is it going to be him, or is it going to be Malcolm Green that draws that assignment? Are they going to play a zone coverage, or are they going to match up man-to-man on A.T. Perry? I'm interested on that matchup. That's going to be one of the key things I'm going to be watching in this game. And looking at this with the Clemson Tigers, I'm going to say, listen, take the ball out of DJU's hand. Will Shipley has been a beast so far this year. 6 touchdowns already, almost 8 yards a carry. He's showing that he can really kind of shoulder the load for the Clemson offense there. I know that they need to get better in the passing attack. DJU, he's making some strides. We're starting to see the talent there. Cade Klubenek is breathing down his neck. I think that situation there is a little on the uneasy side. I don't necessarily have a lot of faith in Clemson right now, especially in the quarterback position. That being said, Clemson's defense is better than Wake Forest's defense. And I think that Clemson's defense can shut down Wake Forest. I don't know if they're going to completely stop them, but no one's scoring 42 points in this game. Wake Forest isn't scoring 42 points. But Clemson may at the end in garbage time, but I doubt it. This is going to be a tight one, man. The over-under is set at 55.5. I'm going to say that this is a 24-21 game. I think this is going to be decided very, very late. But I know right now, I'm going to say this again, that the universe will do this just to spite me. Clemson wins this game 24-21 over the Demon Deacons. And we start talking about Clemson being 4-0 and having a win over a top 25 team, which we know the rankings don't mean diddly squat right now. So
one little factor, though, we're going to throw in is next Clemson hosts NC State.
Mm.
And last year, the Wolfpack took them down at the very end. Will they be looking past Wake Forest to the revenge game, Leary and the Wolfpack? That's a little factor right there that maybe early in the football game might have a little impact, or during practice. How does Dabo get this squad ready to go? You know, you're coming off of a game versus Furman and Louisiana Tech the past 2 weeks. You had Georgia Tech. I don't really get up for that one either. Are you looking? Are you circling October 1st and not what focused on September 24th? That could be a big factor. So you got to make sure if Dabo's coaching, get them locked in for the here and now, and don't look ahead, because we've seen what happens when teams look ahead. They get beat by other teams like Marshall or App State and so on.
It's really curious here, Fresh. So NC State is going to have, it has UConn. They're going to win that game. They'll be 4-0 going into next weekend. Clemson wins this. That's two 4-0 teams, and we're talking about NC State versus Clemson next weekend. Let's say Wake Forest pulls this game out and they go 4-0. Florida State has Boston College this weekend to go to 4-0 as well. So I think any combination is going to wind up dictating who we're winding up talking about next week. And we actually wind up talking about both of those games. But right now we're looking at a very intriguing matchup. I think that's kind of the reason why we circled this as a game of the week, because that there's so many different storylines that can kind of stem out of this game depending on what happens between Clemson and Wake Forest.
Definitely. And I think even game day, college game is probably looking at too of, hey, if Clemson wins and NC State wins, they're undefeated. Could game day make the trip up there to Clemson, South Carolina? It'd be interesting to see how that goes down.
Yeah, where's game day at this weekend? Are they in Rocky Top?
They're in Rocky Top. They went up there for Tennessee, Florida.
Gotcha. That'll be a good game. All right, Fresh. One last thing here, real quick, just on an update. This is an interesting one. The Mount Union Purple Raiders are facing the Muskingum Fighting Muskies. Check this out. Both teams have not won by less than 4 touchdowns. Mount Union has won games 65-0 and 55-7. Muskingum has won 31-3, 37-7. So the question is, and let's take a look here at a point spread. This game is at Muskingum, and I'll say here, because Mount Union's won by every game by at least 48 points so far. So I'm going to set the line here. Does Mount Union win by 38 over a 2-0 Muskingum team?
I'm going to say the Purple Raiders cover.
Wow. Okay. We'll see. Tracking the Mount Union Purple Raiders each week this year. Always fun time to look at D3 football.
Alliance, Ohio, everybody. If you haven't been there, stop by. It's a really cool place.
And one of the best football programs in the lower levels, man. Like, Mount Union produces some damn good football down there.
D3 dominance right there. Them and
Whitewater.
And Wisconsin Whitewater, and the NC North Central College won it last year. But those 3 programs are dominant D3 programs that they will always be playing for the Stag Bowl every year.
Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to another episode of the Irrational Confidence Podcast. We're part of Spinnable Sports, so make sure you're going to spinnablesports.com. Yep, that is spinnablesports.com. I want to say a special thank you to our producer, Drew, for putting this whole thing together. Like, subscribe wherever you get your podcast from, whether that's Apple, Spotify, Good Pods, Apple, Amazon Pods, whatever pods there are. There's a bunch of them. Like, subscribe, leave us those 5-star reviews, because you guys know, Fresh and I, we're those 5-star prospects. If you're watching this on the YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the Spinnable Sports channel. We release at least 2 videos every single week. A lot more stuff out there. So make sure you give us that thumbs up, liking this video if you're watching 2 faces that were definitely made for radio. Check us out there on the YouTube. Follow us along on Twitter. Remember, each week we're putting out a new poll that allows you to decide which games we're talking about going into the next week. Those polls usually go up on Friday or Saturday, but definitely interact with us there on Twitter. We enjoy it. We have so much fun talking to people of different fan bases, getting different perspectives. It allows us really to make this podcast a great thing. It allows us to see all the things going on in college football.
Bye, y'all.